everyone, and welcome to the People of Color Living with Diabetes Virtual Summit. Today's session is extremely exciting for me and hopefully for you all as well, as we're talking about how important it is to make space for everyone's identity in the diabetes space. And I'm joined with a fabulous panel of advocates. I am going to turn it over to Matt Allman, who's the moderator for this session, and he's going to introduce, or let the speakers rather introduce themselves so that we can learn who they are and then learn from them. Thank you again for joining. Matt, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Keisha. Hi, everyone. So if we can just go around and do a brief introduction of who you are, where you're joining from, if you're comfortable sharing that, and anything else that is relevant to today's session. So if we want to start with Adrianne.
Hi, everyone. My name is Adrianne Abed-Fitt. I'm joining from Sacramento, California. I've been type 1 diabetic since, 6 years ago now. Today's my birthday, actually. So I'm excited to be here celebrating my birthday and celebrating diabetes awareness. I identify as bisexual, and I just got my master's in public health, and I hope to pursue health education and diabetes education in the future.
I can go. Happy birthday, Adrian. It's also my birthday. I am Simone Satchel. My pronouns are Simone, he, and they. I've been diabetic type 1 since it'll be 28 years next month. And my blood sugar is low right now. So I'm a little scattered. I'm from New York City. I'm in the Bronx right now. And yeah, I don't know if there's other things that we were supposed to say. Oh, I'm trans and non-binary, queer as well.
Thank you. Sorry, I was just struggling here with the Zoom a little bit. All right, Lucia.
Okay, hi, my name is Lucia Mato. I have been living with diabetes for almost 30 years. I am a lawyer and a psychology student, and I live in Argentina. I am part of the team behind Beyond Type 1's Hispanic Properties.
Thank you. And I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Matt Allman. I have been a type 1 since 2005. And I am located outside of Baltimore in Maryland. I identify as queer and trans. I use he, him pronouns. So what we're going to do now is we are going to ask a couple of questions. If you please just bear with me a moment. I'm struggling a little bit with Zoom here. Gotta love technology. So alrighty here, let's see what we've got. So one of the questions that we have today is, why is sexual diversity relevant when it comes to living with diabetes and your experience as a diabetic? And whoever wants to chime in first, yeah.
Okay. I think it's relevant because, you know, our sexual identities are not always acknowledged, just like our type 1s and other diabetes are not always acknowledged in our communities. I know as a Black person, I rarely see people who look like me in other type 1 related support groups and classes. And often when my sexual identity comes up, most people don't see me as bisexual because my partner is a man. So there's a lot of parallels in both, and I feel like there needs to be more acknowledgement, less bias, and less general assumptions of what our illnesses are, what our identities are as a whole.
Awesome, thank you. And who would like to go next?
Well, I think that we should be free to be ourselves. And it's important that we can set aside our differences when it comes to fight for our health within the diabetes space. It is important to accept that you have diabetes. It's not easy for many people to accept that. And it's also important to accept your sexuality as part of yourself. So I think that diabetes and sexual orientation have this in common, that when you accept them, you live happier and you live better.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm like pro not compartmentalizing myself or any others, just because I feel one, and also like needing to kind of compartmentalize myself in certain spaces, like being Black. I can be Black in a space with other Black folks, but then once my sexuality or my gender or those things come up, it can be an issue, or I feel like it can be. So like, I feel safest in spaces where I can be my full self. Sadly, it's rare that those, like, I find that those spaces are hard to find. Like usually someone else's house or someone I'm comfortable with. But even then, like, it's just hard because like you have to like pick what labor you want to have to like defend, or what part of you need to defend, and like, or like explain, or like and get people to understand that it's way more complex than any bit of their understandings of any bit of your identity. So then to be in the space where to like that you can be all these things and also like not have to defend them or put that labor in, or like, you know what I mean, or like just be, is hard. So like, yes, it's important to be able to be all of yourself, because then that takes labor away from something else, and then low blood sugars happen, or stress, and etc. Right? So yes, like just for like well-being, to accept it, but also to be allowed to be it is important, right? And we need more spaces for us to be our full selves.
I love that. I want to interject. I'm sorry. I've been trying to not to do that. Thank you so much for everything that you just said there. A lot of what you just mentioned, and I'm sorry, you said it's Simone, right? I want to make sure. Okay. A lot of what you just mentioned reminds me of the conversation we had with Professor Tanya Hageman on Thursday, where she talked about passing and masking. And, you know, I love that you said, I like being in a place where I can just exist and I can just be me. And kind of the follow up, which is so important for all of us, but kind of the follow up to Matt's question, like, how have you had to pass and mask, not just in the space of having diabetes, but in the space of being, you know, yourself, your whole person, as it relates to not only having diabetes, but as it relates to sexual orientation as well? And then secondly, do you still think that you pass and mask, or are you at the point in your life where you don't do that anymore? And how can people get to that point? So that was a loaded question. There was a lot of things, but I think it's so important, because I think that all three of you seem, or four of you, Matt included, you seem like you're at this point where it's like, I'm comfortable standing and being in my own, and I identify with this, or I don't identify, or I identify with a whole bunch of things. So let me rephrase the question. How, you know, do you still think that you have to mask as it relates to both your diagnosis and your sexual orientation? And if you don't any longer, what did it take to get you to the point where you don't any longer have to mask? And we can start with Lucy, and then Adrianne, and then Simone.
Okay, in my case, it was easier to accept my sexual orientation than accepting my diabetes. Yes, it took me more than 20 years to accept my diabetes fully, to start being in charge and taking care of myself properly. It was really hard. While my sexual orientation was something that I had clear since I was 18 years old or so, I felt really empowered. And this is who I am. And I wish that the same had happened with diabetes.
Oh, I'm on mute. That was such a profound statement. Oh my God. Yeah, it almost just gave me goosebumps. So, and is it because, in a sense, and then we'll go to you, Adrianne, is it because you felt like you controlled the sexual orientation, but you didn't control diabetes? Is that why you felt more empowered? Or was there something else? Because that's a huge comparison.
Maybe that was in my case, but it's not everybody's case.
Okay, in your case. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, Adrianne, I'll let you answer the question next.
Honestly, I think both my identity as a bisexual woman and as a type 1 were both very hard to accept. I wouldn't call myself completely out. I disclose that information to people in spaces where I feel like it's appropriate. And I kind of realized later on in life that I wasn't straight. So that's been a very interesting journey for me. And I also got diagnosed with type 1 later on in life. So they both kind of came at a time where I was discovering who I was as a person and also discovering the things I have to do to take care of my body as a type 1 diabetic. And I was actually misdiagnosed with type 2 at first. So I was on type 2 medication for a while, and that really messed up my diabetic identity as well, because I didn't really know what was going on. I had to trust my doctors. I had to do my own research, and I finally got my type 1 diagnosis. And I would say I've accepted it now, 6 years later. But, it's hard to hide your pump and your CGM. If you want to be comfortable in your clothing, sometimes they have to be shown. And I'm proud of showing it, because I will get people coming up to me and say, "Oh, wow, you're diabetic. I have this pump. I have this CGM." And we just find people on the street. I like to say diabetics in the wild. It's so much fun to see people that look like you, or at least struggle with your same illness. And as I said, with my sexual identity, I've come to terms with it, but like I said, it's something where I feel like it's a need to know thing about me. I don't feel like it's appropriate at all times, but that's my personal feeling, probably because I'm married.
I like that. It's like, this is who I am, but I'm not shouting it from the rooftops either.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that. Thank you so much for sharing. And then Simone.
It's hard to answer. Just because I feel like all this is not linear. Like I think a lot of maybe what makes the processing or accepting of oneself harder is societal things. So it's like trying to learn yourself through society. That's hard, because when I was younger, a lot of the things I identify as, or the ways I identified, that language didn't exist in my world, or I'm not sure anywhere at that point, So like, it's still like this. I still feel like I'm processing who I am, and I feel like a lot of the real like ways that I am, or the identifier markers that I am, don't exist. And you have, or like, to exist in society, one must state, especially more so now, like you must have those like things. So I use the ones that exist as best as they fit me, that I'm like, oh yeah, that feels right. But honestly, like, and that makes it hard too, is that the one that best describes me is my name, like me, I'm me, right? And these things are like part of me. I've been type 1 since I was 10. I still feel like parts of me are in denial about my abilities and disabilities, right? Or like different abilities that I have, that I can and can't do certain things at certain time for different reasons. Not feeling safe in certain spaces because I can and cannot like be, again, like my complete self, or say like, so now I like when I started when I was first type 1, there were injections, and those bring up different like innuendos, right? Needles and syringes. So I felt like I needed to show that I had a monitor, that I had insulin, that I wasn't injecting other things, and that I was not injecting into my veins, you know, and being in college and that being a thing, and so now like social media is great because I feel like it puts those things out there for me. So I put as much as I can in my bio. Am I comfortable saying everything? Like, no, anywhere. No, I don't think anyone knows all of me. Maybe a few people, but like, you know, like all the details, survivor, etc. Right? Like there's just a lot. And how much energy do you have to share, right? That's a thing, or like expose yourself, for lack of better words. But like, yeah, just it's like, who do I have the energy to share myself with? Who will absorb me in the proper ways or the ways that I need to? So it's yes about my brain and how I accept myself, but also like the spaces that are available. And I think that that's why we're talking about this too, like the spaces that people will make for who and for whom, right?
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say it almost sounds like protecting your peace. Protecting your peace, protecting your energy, deciding who I want to share, you know, all of me with, or some parts of me with.
Absolutely, protection, yeah, defense mechanisms, like, yeah. So it's about, yes, it's about how much you can say or want to say, or like what will happen if you say all these things, or like, you know, even, and also like in your brain, like, or in my, let me speak for myself, my brain, I'm always just like, who is in this space with me? Right? How much of myself do I have to explain? If I'm at a dance party, like, you know what I mean? I'm just dancing. I'm there to dance. I'm there to enjoy myself. But then later, like, it sometimes feels like you have to, like, and that's, I guess, the process of getting to know others, right? Or getting to know yourself. Also, like, it's not a linear thing. Language is a thing. Like the ways to explain yourself, these are all things. Like diabetes has changed, or even the way people process it, but also it's still like some sort of weird joke. So like there's just like too many layers to like get through in one visit or two, or even like 30 years of lifetime, like talking to folks, and like, you know, so like, yes, like accepting oneself, yes, making space, but all of this will always just be a process, right? But like, who's willing to engage and who is able to engage, in ways to like just make space for themselves first, right? And then be able to make space for others completely to share the space with you, right?
Perfect. Thank you for that. Thank you so much for answering that, Matt. I'll turn it back over down to you for our next round of questions.
All right, thank you, Keisha. All right, so I've got a couple of different questions here. I'm just going to go ahead and read off the first prompt that I've got. What kind of support can someone offer that is not a member of the LGBTQIA+ community to individuals who are part of that community, also living with diabetes? And who would like to go first?
Well, I think that they don't have to do anything special. Just offering their friendship will be more than enough. And I think that the key point is trying to normalize that gay people exist and that we are there, and that it's not such a, wow, look at this person, she's a lesbian or he's gay. No, that's something normal. So it's important to be visible in order to normalize the diverse sexual orientations that exist in the world. That's it.
Awesome. Thank you. And who would like to go next?
I'll go. Lucy, I love what you said. You know, it's normal. You know, I think I also have that same belief, but also like just being mindful of assumptions, questions you might have when you hear like, oh, this person is queer, this person is trans, this person's also diabetic. How would you feel if someone came up to you and was like, oh, should you be eating that? You're like, oh, or were you born like this, or did you decide one day? Like while those questions might feel to you as harmless and you're just trying to understand, they can be very hurtful to us, especially when we hear them all day long. And in attempt to normalize us, we need to make sure that we're treating each other with respect, with dignity, and not spotlighting us in situations where the spotlight is inappropriate, like at work or at school, in our private, professional spaces. It's just not appropriate. And I think if we can all take a step back and kind of analyze those internal questions, maybe some biases, I think we could all be on a better track to helping queer people and diabetic people navigate their world easier.
Excellent answers. And that'll actually, some of what you just talked about will feed in really well to one of the next questions I'll ask, but I'll let you go and answer this first prompt before we go into the next one.
Simone.
All right, looks like my Zoom is
funky. Yeah, I'm pro making space for folks. So yeah, and also like what everyone else has said. Yeah, like not assuming like sometimes it makes it hard to like lead with those things because assumptions come up and then you have to answer questions or like discount myths or like those beliefs or whatever that people are thinking. So yeah, like making space for people to show up as they are, like not what you expect them to be based on what you know of them. Because even the thing like folks you know well, like may need to show up in a space a different time or a different way, or like I need to know that I could be in a space and go low and not feel a particular way after those things. So just like be expansive in your space making and like your hospitality, right? Like just be like, you can show up how you need. Obviously, as long as we're both safe, then it's fine. Like not saying that people can come and like ruin your property, but I'm saying like, like just being, I don't know, yeah, just allowing folks to show up as they are and not as you can imagine.
Can I interject there? Because the question is, what kind of support can someone that's not a member of the community provide, right? And so as someone that's not a member of the community, I feel like I have a response. And so one of the things that I think that we can do is just stop asking questions. Adrianne, you said something about, people want to know, were you born this way, or what difference does it make? Even if it is a choice. And this is ultimately what I have to do for myself, right? Because my thought process has not always been progressive, as some people might say. But, I used to be, because religion and other things, spirituality rather, would make me, kind of question some of those things. Well, why does this, and what happens in early childhood, and, what happened during the developmental stage, and this, and it's just like, what if it is a choice? What if nothing happened and it is a choice? People choose how they want to live. People choose how they want to sin. This is how I have to say it to my, religious family. People choose how they want to be called, how they want to be. What if it is a choice? So what? And so I think that one of the best things that, people outside of the community can do is, you said it, Simone, when you first started, just let people be, just let people exist. Just let people be. So I just wanted to add my 2 cents there before we went to the next question, Matt.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, because those were all just incredible answers. So we'll move into the next prompt that we've got here, which is, what is something that you want people to know about their good intentions, but while they may be well-intended, are not always, they don't always come off as well-intended as it relates to diabetes as well as sexual orientation. It could be one, the other, or both.
Yeah, I always think, what is your relationship with that person? Before you ask them a question, before you have a good intention, analyze what your relationship with that person is. If they're a coworker, it may not be appropriate. If they are, a close relative, like a sister or brother, it may be a better space to ask those questions. But also be prepared for a negative response, regardless of the relationship. If you feel like, oh no, I know this person, if I should be able to ask this question. If they are not in the mood to answer those questions or to entertain your assumptions, you might get a negative response. And I would try not to take it personally. I think I would take it as a learning experience. Because I know for me, when I'm low, I am the worst person to talk to. I have zero patience. I'm very mean, and I don't mean to be, but it's just I'm busy trying not to die. That's what I tell people. When I'm going low, I'm busy trying not to die, because that's what it feels like sometimes. And those good intentions just, they 9 times out of 10 don't feel like it. And that might be my own personal opinion, but I've had so many people try to be good and just be like, oh, what about keto? What about this food? What about, these medicines from the, it's after a while, it's like talking to a brick wall, and after so many of those conversations, it's just, you're done and you've had enough. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. I'm
Totally
going a little
fine.
low as myself. But yeah, I guess to recap, analyze your relationship with that person before you have a good intention, and be prepared for that good intention to come back in your face in a not so great way, and take it as a learning experience and not as a personality trait from that person.
Awesome, thank you. And who would like to answer next, Lucy or Simone?
I think that somebody can make a comment that's not the best, with very good intentions, and we shouldn't get angry. We shouldn't get angry all the time. We should explain, because sometimes people don't have the best comments on something just because they don't know about it, and they are not obliged to know everything when it comes to sexual orientation or diabetes. Sometimes people think that you were diagnosed because you ate a lot of sugar when you were young. Well, no, and it's a terrible comment. Of course it is, but we know that it was not because of that, and we could explain this person that it's not because of that, that this because blah, blah, blah. Why getting angry? It is a waste of energy.
Thank you. Simone?
I'll pass.
All right, awesome. All right, so our next prompt here is explain the difference between sexual orientation and gender identity. Does anybody want to chime in on that one? And there's absolutely no pressure.
Yes, I would love to mention on this one, because people tend to confuse these two concepts a lot. Sexual orientation is who you are attracted to. Men, women, both, none. And gender is a social construction. What does a social construction mean? Well, it means that depending on the biological sex you were born with, society expects you to behave in one way if you're a man, or another way if you're a woman. And this also implies how you look, how you behave, how you wear, the roles you play in society, things which have nothing to do with your biological sex. So gender is something that is built, it's cultural.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Does anyone else want to chime in on this before we move to the next question?
Oh, go ahead, Adrienne. That was a great example. Go ahead, or explanation rather.
Yeah. Sorry, was the question like what the difference is, or I see. Yeah, I think Lucy did a great job explaining. If anything, I was just going to comment on the fact that they can both be ever-changing, and how they're not stagnant. But yeah, I don't have any other bits to add to that.
I love that. Thank you. And mentioning that it's not, necessarily static over time, and that it can change. And I think that's important for people to know because it's not really put out there very much. Right, so we'll go ahead and move to our next question here. How does your identity as a person of color impact your journey with diabetes? And who would like to go first?
Me, sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, at the moment, luckily, it does not affect me. I am happily married to another woman, and we have a very happy life. We are absolutely open when it comes to our marriage. We don't hide anything, and I have become good friends with my healthcare professionals, and they know about me. I think that this is key, that our healthcare professionals know about ourselves, because that way they will be able to take care of ourselves in a better way. If we omit parts of us, well, the health care that they will provide will not be as good as it could be if we were more open about everything.
That's a great answer. Thank you. Simone, would you like to go next?
Well, being Black and dealing with healthcare, I sadly, not even sadly, I just can't imagine what healthcare is like for others. I feel like it's difficult no matter what, but there's obviously disproportionately less than treatment for Black folks. So it makes it hard to be someone who needs to see doctors a lot. I don't, and not have, I feel like it's rare that I've had a doctor that I liked. I feel like it's even more rare that I had a doctor that I feel spoke to me with respect or treated me the way, with bedside manner or any of those things. And also, seeing a doctor who's not white also, seeing doctors who get what I'm saying, or that I don't have to like give social definitions for like things I'm saying. But yeah, there's a real disconnect. So I feel like the first, maybe not even the first, all of my medical, like all the 28 years have just been like this big wrestle with not trusting doctors because I'm Black, and also because I've dealt with doctors who just haven't been nice. Like there's this weird, like, I was thinking about this morning because I'm like, yeah, it's my birthday, and they told me I wouldn't be here, or they told me I would be born by now. But always like not in this way where like this is something that this person needs to process that could happen, but more like if you don't like change your behavior, then these things will happen at your fault. And almost, and what she said before about like this sugar thing, eating too much sugar causing diabetes. I really didn't learn that until pretty recently. Like in my head, I was like, is that really why? Because like my cousins and my sister and like everyone else still ate, like we all ate the same things, and like maybe like, you know, so I was always interested in that. But like, yeah, just like, it's weird to spend a lot of time with folks who are kind of not considerate of your whole being, or just like the anxieties you have just by being in the skin you're in, and the identities you're in, and like not associate, like it's all about, so did you take this? Did you bolus this? And I'm like, yeah, but also like I get stressed on the train, so like I have a lot of low blood sugars now, or like things like that. So it's just like this weird relationship to maintain, and to be required to maintain because it like saves your life or maintains your life. It's this weird dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome answer. Thank you so much.
To add to that, historically, Black women are just not believed by medical professionals. You know, when we're in pain, it's written off. It's oh, it's not as bad as it is. We know better because we went to, you know, medical school, and I definitely felt that a lot when I was in that type 2, type 1 diagnosis phase of my life. Because I didn't have a history of people with type 2 in my family. And the medication didn't seem like it was working out. I felt sick. I'm already very a thin person, and I was losing weight on that medication. And it took so much advocacy from me and from my family to have them just test me for type 1. Like, let's just see, you know, and that was such a hassle, you know, and my doctor never outright said, well, we know African-Americans, Black people disproportionately, you know, have type 2 diabetes. And I'm like, sure, I get that statistic, but if the medication's not working for me, maybe it's something else, God forbid. I'm able to laugh about it now, but it was a struggle. And even when I did get that diagnosis of type 1, you know, my struggles didn't go away. Like, sure, I was bleeding now, great. But now I was on injections for a while. And I have memories of people approaching me and asking me if I'm injecting drugs, you know, and I don't know if my white diabetics have that same experience, but it felt like it was a direct target against my race. I know when I do tell people I'm diabetic now, most people assume like, oh, you have diabetes, you're so skinny, you eat so well, like how does that even work? And those are such like misconceptions that are so tiring to have to explain. And actually this point reminds me of my earlier point of a good intention of, oh, you seem so healthy, you know. I don't think it's our responsibility to teach people 100% of the time. You know, Google is free. If you have questions, like Google, you know, diabetes in Black people, you know, and you'll find a wealth of knowledge. And we're as Black people and as Black women, I feel like we are always responsible for teaching people. And that is the worst, especially when we're actively trying to save ourselves every day with our blood sugars. It's just another straw on our camel back that eventually will break. And sometimes, you know, I have my bad days, I have my good days. But I think there are definitely unique experiences that Black people and Black women, for me particularly, who have and who are dealing with diabetes as well.
So much I want to say, but I'm not
So
for
much,
time's sake.
yeah.
Thank you so much for saying that, Adrianne. Yes, Google. Google is there as a resource. Google and compassion and empathy.
So well put. Thank you so much, because that is really important to bring that up, especially with encouraging people to go out and research it themselves rather than having you do that emotional labor. All right, and it looks like we did have a question in the chat. I'm just going to go ahead and scroll back up to it here. It looks like there is a question for Lucy. I'm going to go ahead and read that out here if you'd like to go ahead and answer that. All right, it says, in our countries, it's still not always possible to be as open as we'd like when it comes to our differences, all of them. What has been the biggest challenge for you? And have you found a diabetes community that has always welcomed you?
Yes, well, I already answered something in the chat, but in my case, I had no challenge because the diabetes community received me and welcomed me with open arms. I felt really, really great being myself since the beginning, and that was wonderful. I understand that in other countries it's not as simple as it would be for me. I'm very empowered about my my sexual orientation, but there are different societies. I think that it is important to be empowered because by being empowered, you can empower others. And at least they see you and they start feeling better about themselves. And it's important that, at least in the diabetes space, we fight for each other and we are together. It doesn't matter if you're Black, it doesn't matter if you're gay. What really matters is that we are trying to live better, the best way possible.
Awesome, thank you so much. All right, and I'll go ahead and ask another question here. How important is diversity and inclusion in the world of diabetes? And why is it so critical? And would anyone like to answer first?
I'll go. I think it's important because it's important to be seen. You know, like when children see examples of themselves in storybooks, for example, you know, it's a powerful tool to communicate with people who look and identify in a certain way. And the diabetes community is not exempt from that. You know, a lot of diabetic literature has, you know, images of white people. And often when I was going through my health education classes when I first got diagnosed, it was mostly people in like their 50s and 60s who were learning how to test their blood sugar, learning how to count carbs, all those things. And I was 22 in that class and I did not feel like I belonged. And a lot of people like, oh, how did you end up here? And those questions I don't think would be asked as often if there were just more examples of us, you know, in the community. And I remember preparing for this summit, I was looking at Diversity in Diabetes website, and I read that people of color often don't seek health support services. And so that is another reason why we don't see each other. So it's not an excuse just because, oh, we don't pursue it. We should just, you know, leave them out of the picture. Like, no, we need to make sure that we're creating spaces where Black and brown and queer people feel like they can come and share their diabetes experience and commune with people who get it. You know, it might be a little bit more difficult, but it's so worth it in the end. Because I've had to remove myself from several groups that are just so predominantly, you know, white, predominantly of one age range, you know, and I just don't receive the same emotional support I do from those groups than when I see people who look like me, or at least look different. You know, when I see a variety of people, I feel more comfortable. I don't feel as alone. I don't feel like it's just me on this little diabetic island by myself. And those resources, I can't overstate how important they are for our mental health as well.
If I can interject here, thank you so much for that, Adrianne. One of the things that is really important, like you said, is being able to see that imagery. I remember when we first started the organization a year ago, and Casey was working on the website, and she said, Quisha, I can't find any pictures of Black people. Like, I cannot find any pictures of like a Black person with a pump or a CGM, and I said, welcome to my world. It's really hard to find. And so our first live talk, Dr. Nagra, she actually talked about the lack of tech equity. And she had several images. And she said, you know, if you Google doctor or endocrinologist, you're going to see all of these white doctors. If you Google person with diabetes wearing a CGM, you'll see, you know, it's just tons of pictures of a white abdomen or a white shoulder, you know, a white arm. And we've known it's existed for a while, but you know, it's got to be better, right? Because you shouldn't be, you know, 12 years old or 22 years old or whatever, and thinking like, I'm the only person that's going through this. And I love the fact that you said you were in that class with older people. I remember when I first started managing a diabetes program, it was in 3rd Ward in Houston. And we had a diabetes program, and down the street was, actually, we were right in the middle of Houston, University of Houston, and is it TSU? Yeah, I think it's TSU and University of Houston. And we recruited students all of the time from the universities, because I'm like, we're here. It's literally like walking distance from one, driving distance from another. And they would come into the center, see the 50, 60-year-old, you know, participants in the class, and they might sit there for the one class, and it's like, they didn't come back. And every time I reach out and say, you know, hey, what happened? And they're like, everybody's old. Because, you know, when you're 20, you think that's old. Everybody's old. Like, and it's uncomfortable. So I believe that we have to do a better job of reaching out to others, but also we have to have that space available to make people feel comfortable as well. So thank you for mentioning those. Lucy or Simone, you have anything to add about that, about diversity in this space? I'm sorry, Lucy, I didn't. Oh, go ahead, Simone. Go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't really have a diabetic community until maybe a couple years ago, and that's still pretty small, and not a lot of melanin is happening there either. So I didn't really consider a community of T1D folks until more recently. I always hoped for it, but most of my diabetic education was by myself. And when I grew up in Staten Island, which is extremely segregated, so all the kids who had pumps were white, and did not want to engage with me. So I would go to events and not be talked to. And so I kind of avoided that until I went to Naomi Berry, and there were kids there, but at that point we were teens and didn't want to engage. But yeah, I'm just feeling like with the apps, can you not hear me? Okay. Yeah, just, yeah, I'm still trying to like navigate things on apps, and meet as many folks as I can, just to even know that, yeah, it's nice to know that I'm not the only one, but even still on the apps, there aren't a lot of people of color, at least that, yeah, and I wish there were more like groups or things like that, just so that even if there are, because I'm not seeing a lot, that there's a way for us to engage or have time and space to.
Thank you so much. Is there anything anyone would like to mention or leave us with as takeaways for this? Because we're going to go ahead and wrap up shortly. But I do want to just pop back to that real quick, that last one. And thank you for mentioning that it is just so important to have those spaces and those dedicated spaces in that community, because that's something that there's not enough of at this time. So working together to create that is so critical. But if anyone has any last words that they would like to leave us with today, I'll go ahead and pass it back to y'all.
Yeah, I specifically would love if you have any words of encouragement for anybody that's either in the community or outside of the community. I know we had a comment in the chat that said, you know, where they're from, diabetes or even sexual orientation is not, you know, widely accepted. So if you have advice for either inside or outside of the community, if you have that to share, that would be great. We can start with Lucy and then Simone and then end with Adrianne.
Okay. Well, I would like to say that we are not just diabetes and we are not just a sexual orientation. We are people, and we are all different. We are all diverse, and we all have our way of being, which is different. So it is essential to know that these things are just parts of ourselves, not everything. And that fully accepting who we are, even with these parts that are not the best, especially diabetes is not the, the best thing that we could wish to have, but it's part of us too. So let's accept it and live better.
Thank you, Lucy. I love that. Simone?
Yeah, I would say take space for yourself and like focus on the parts that are hard for you to find space for anywhere else, or like the parts of you that you feel like you should be less proud of but that keep coming up. Make space for that person, make space for those parts of you. And I would say look for us because we're here. And like, I have social media, I'm on Instagram, just put my name in. I would love to make space for as many folks as possible, just because, yeah, I would hope you would do the same. But yeah, just like let yourself be in space and like process that with yourself. And then one day you hopefully can like exclaim it to the best of your ability and be okay with that. You know, not okay with it, like love it, to be honest, like love yourself. And not that that's a linear thing. It's some days you may not even consider that, but you know, like here and there at least, like find space and time to like really love all of you.
I love that. Thank you so much for that. And Adrianne, any final last words?
Yeah, Simone, happy birthday, by the way. I don't think I said it earlier. I really resonate with make space for yourself. I have anxiety disorder. The last person I care about is myself, which is really sad to say, but it's true. And I think it's okay to have bad days. You know, be kind to yourself. accept the bad days, start again tomorrow. Don't try to hold on to the bad, because it really does just bring you down day after day after day. And if you want to continue to be an advocate for others, you have to advocate for yourself. And that's something I struggle with all the time, which is why I'm saying it, because I believe you got to say it if you believe it. Also, thank you for allowing us to speak today. I felt like this was a great opportunity for us to engage and talk about identity and diabetes. And while a few of us went low, I think it was a great experience for me, and I'm happy to be here, and thank you for the opportunity.
I am just thrilled. Thank you all so much for your transparency. And yes, again, happy birthday to you, Adrianne. Happy birthday to Simone. Oh, Simone's got a handsome puppy there. And our moderator, Matt, I've got to let you have the last word. I want to, if you have any words of encouragement as well, would love to hear that from you also.
Oh man, put me on the spot here. I'm absolutely blown away by everything everyone said. It's incredible and just wow. And I really love, what said is, you need to be an advocate for yourself before you can be an advocate for others. And also making sure that you love yourself, even when it's hard, making space for yourself. It's really affirming and inspiring to hear that. Because, like it's been said, we have good days, we have bad days. And, being and feeling free to be who we are as we are. I think that's so critical, and having people know that, we're people too, we're here, and, accepting us and making space for everyone. So I think that's so critical.
So critical. Absolutely. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. Thank you to the wonderful panelists. With that being said, let's love each other more, okay? Love ourselves for sure, but let's try to be a little bit more understanding, accepting, and celebratory of our differences, because ultimately that's what makes life unique, is that we're all different. That's how we were designed. Thank you again, everyone. Have a great rest of your Saturday. Hope to see you at the live session. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.